let's widen the view statewide. Governor Whitmer is not here at the policy conference this year because she's getting ready for her State of the State address, which is happening tonight. So we're recording one day early. She's also getting a lot of national attention. She's going to be giving the Democratic rebuttal after the presidential State of the Union in February, which I think is a very interesting thing that we can talk to. Let's talk a little bit about State of the State. Obviously, roads on the agenda yet again for this year. And now I feel like we're hearing a couple of different ideas circulating around about how we're going to be able to do this. Nolan.
Well, I don't see how the challenge is any easier this year than last year. In fact, I think it's harder. Last year was the year to do it. 2020 is election year. You've got all these House members who are going to be facing election in November, both Republican and Democrat. And you know, we haven't built enough public support yet for the idea of raising revenue for roads.
But people say that this is the most important issue to them.
And they also said, we did, the Detroit News ran the Chambers poll from last week. 30% of people, it's their top priority. It's the highest ranked priority in Michigan, but over half of people believe we already got enough money to do the work.
Okay, but we don't have $2 billion lying around, correct, to do the work?
We don't have $2 billion lying around, and you know, that number gets worse as you fail to come up with it each year. You are letting more and more roads reach worse and worse condition. In a few years, it could be $2.5 billion, right? I mean,
but the
urgency.
Reality is you're not going to be. It's going to be hard to get $2 billion of work done in a year anyway.
It would,
but
yeah.
You know, but we do need some amount of money. Now, this idea of bonding for it, I think that has some appeal
like that idea.
Short term for a couple years.
I don't like that.
While
idea.
we try to figure out the right mix for
that is not
revenue.
something.
What the people will
It's not
support.
something you borrow for because it's not permanent infrastructure,
it's not
right?
Ideal.
It's
maintenance.
You're talking
You've got to keep the bond short term, and you can only
I
do it for a couple
I think
years.
that's really irresponsible. I get that.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, I get that we don't have a lot of other choices, but we've got to start talking about other ways to raise that money because people are not going to vote for new taxes, I think.
Right.
They might, though. This idea about raising much of the money through municipal tax issues, I think, you know, they have had some success.
Yeah.
When communities have gone to their voters and said, we need a tax to fix your local
road right there.
And that's a lot of the problem.
But the problem with that is the unevenness in municipal finances. There's going to be a lot of places that's not as possible as it is others. So now you're going to leave rural communities and other poor communities behind. I don't love that either.
Rural communities are beginning
they get
a disproportionate share anyway. So the idea of fixing Act 51 to better distribute the money, I think that's going to happen.
Okay, really interesting that the Senate is now commissioning a study to the tune of $150,000. That might not go over very well for people to say, wait a minute, what about some toll roads here in Michigan, which has always been a non-starter because we are not a drive-through state.
Well, that's actually not so. We are not the same kind of drive-through state that Ohio or Pennsylvania is, but Chad Livengood, who wrote the story about this 2 weeks ago for Cranes, showed how much traffic actually comes through here. You talk about the Toronto to Chicago corridor for trucks. There's no other way to get there other than through Michigan. There's also traffic from the south that comes up into Canada through Michigan. There are some places where you could do discrete tolling to catch that traffic. You can also do local tolling. I mean, if you go to Chicago into the suburbs and drive around on the freeways, you pay tolls on all of those places to get wherever it is you're going, work or school or home, and nobody thinks anything of it. And that's what pays for those roads. We don't have a culture of doing that here.
No, we're not going to develop
But there's no
one.
reason that we can't consider that along other.
I think tolls might work in certain places, and different states.
Well, they couldn't do it everywhere.
But tolls in an urban area where you're jumping on one freeway onto another freeway.
Well, nobody has tolls in urban areas.
I think that's onerous. Well, you just said Chicago.
Well, suburban Chicago.
I think that's onerous because you think of the number of times a day you're on a different freeway.
Well, they're going to study it.
Yeah,
here's the other thing about
tolls. It may work in some places.
But here's the other thing about tolls that people don't understand is that when you say toll, people think of the little booth with the gate and the ticket and the person in the thing. It doesn't work that way anymore. You just drive through a thing. It calculates
but
your.
you still need
cost.
the booths and the gates. because not everybody, particularly if you're going to get the pass-through
if you have the pass, but you don't, I mean,
But people
But you
traveling
still pay
from
it,
other states won't have the pass. So you still need infrastructure.
Well,
well, that's true, right.
All right, seeing as we're not going to solve roads right now, in the time that we have left, Governor Whitmer tapped to give the Democratic rebuttal after the State of the Union. What does that mean to you, Nolan?
Well, I mean, I think we should be proud as a state. I don't know, I mean, it seems a little early to be spotlighting her. You know, she's 1 year in, hasn't got much done yet, but, you know, she is an example of a woman who beat a Republican to take the office, and that's sort of what Democrats are touting this year.
Yeah, powerful
This is
voice.
about 2018 and 2020.
Right.
It is about reminding voters, Democratic voters, of what happened just 2 years ago and hoping that they get excited in the same way for this November.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks, guys.